Every farmer knows the sounds of their own land. But one Tuesday evening, I came home to a new sound. A low, angry buzz that had no business being on my family's farm of over 100 years. I followed the hum past my barn, and that's when my blood went cold. An electric fence, its plastic insulators glinting in the setting sun, cut a straight, arrogant line directly across my pumpkin patch. When I called the number on the professionally printed sign, the man on the other end, the HOA president, told me that according to their new survey, the land under the fence was now theirs. They thought they were dealing with a simple farmer who'd just roll over. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. Before all this, life was quiet. My farm isn't some weekend hobby. It's my life, my office, and a heritage passed down through 4 generations. For a century, our nearest neighbors were a mile down the road. But then, about a year ago, a developer bought the adjacent plot and threw up a subdivision called Willow Creek Estates. Suddenly, I had 80 new neighbors. Their pristine, identical houses and perfectly manicured lawns stood in stark contrast to my muddy boots and working barns. I'm a live and let live kind of guy. I waved when they drove by, didn't complain about their parties. But from the beginning, there was a tension. They were governed by a homeowners association, a concept as foreign to me as a concrete pasture. Their world was rules about mailbox colors and lawn height. My world was seasons, soil, and hard work. The president of this HOA, a man I'll call Mr. Harrison, seemed to personify this clash. He was a retired city executive who saw my farm less as a piece of living history and more as an eyesore ruining his perfect suburban view. We'd had a few run-ins, polite but firm conversations about where my property line ended and their common area began. I always pointed to the thick, ancient stone walls my great-grandfather had built. The lines were clear, or so I thought. Staring at that humming wire cutting across my land, our polite disagreements felt like a distant memory. This was a declaration of war. My first call was to Mr. Harrison. He answered with a smug satisfaction in his voice that made my teeth ache. "Ah, the farmer," he said. "I assume you've seen our security enhancement." "You're what?" I asked, my voice tight. "You built a fence on my land, Harrison. You ran it right over my crops." He actually chuckled. "There seems to be a misunderstanding of ownership. According to a survey we commissioned, that little strip has always been misaligned. It's common area for Willow Creek. We've simply reclaimed it. The fence is there to mark the new, correct boundary. And for your own safety, I'd advise you not to cross it." I was speechless. He was claiming my land that had been in my family since before the state even had a highway, based on a secret survey I'd never seen. He finished the call by telling me that any attempt to cross or tamper with the fence would be considered trespassing. I hung up the phone, the buzzing of the fence now drowned out by the roaring in my ears. They hadn't just built a fence, they had drawn a battle line. A few days later, a certified letter arrived from the HOA's lawyers. It officially informed me that a 10-foot wide, quarter-mile-long strip of my farm was now, in their minds, the property of the Willow Creek HOA. They included a grainy photocopy of their survey, a document that looked like it was drawn with a crayon. It conveniently shaved off the exact piece of land they wanted, slicing through my pumpkin patch and cutting off my access to a freshwater spring I used for irrigation. I decided to try the reasonable approach first. I went to their next HOA meeting, held in a sterile clubhouse that smelled of air freshener and entitlement. I brought my official, county-registered deed, the original survey maps, and aerial photos from the last 50 years. I laid it all out on the table. "This is my land," I said, keeping my voice even. "It has been for 100 years. Your survey is incorrect." Harrison barely glanced at my evidence. He waved a dismissive hand. "Those are old papers. Obsolete. Our modern survey is far more accurate." The rest of the board just nodded along like bobbleheads. He then told me that not only was the fence staying, but they would be sending me a bill for half of its installation cost. Then the threats started. Another letter arrived, this one with a schedule of fines. They threatened a $1,000 per day fine for trespassing on what was now their common area if I stepped over the line. Another $500 threat for the unmaintained state of the crops they had just seized. They were trying to fine me for the state of my own pumpkins on my own land. The sheer audacity was almost comical. An HOA has zero legal authority to fine a non-member let alone seize their land. They were counting on me being too intimidated or too simple to know that. That was their biggest mistake. That's when I decided to stop being the reasonable neighbor. If you're enjoying the story of a bureaucracy getting what it deserves, do me a favor and hit that like button. It really helps the channel, and trust me, the payback is just getting started. I didn't just get a lawyer. I got the lawyer. A man named Frank Miller, a legendary property attorney in our state known for chewing up arrogant developers and overreaching HOAs for breakfast. When I explained the situation, Frank didn't just smile. He let out a low, predatory laugh. Frank's first move was a formal cease and desist letter demanding the immediate removal of the fence. He cited half a dozen state laws they'd broken regarding trespass, property damage, and illegal fence installation. It turns out, you can't just throw up a high-voltage electric fence without permits and specific safety measures, something the HOA had completely ignored. Harrison's lawyer sent back a one-sentence response. "We will see you in court. Fine by me." Frank immediately filed for a preliminary injunction, an emergency hearing to get the fence taken down while the bigger case was pending. Harrison and the entire HOA board showed up in their Sunday best, looking smug. Their lawyer presented their shoddy survey and argued they were just acting in their community's best interest. Then, it was Frank's turn. He didn't even bother with their survey. Instead, he placed a single, thick, leather-bound folder on the judge's bench. "Your Honor," Frank began, his voice echoing in the courtroom. "We're not here today to argue about surveys. We're here to talk about this." He opened the folder, revealing a document yellowed with age, full of intricate, hand-drawn maps. This is the original master deed and covenant for the entire region, dating back to 1922. It covers my client's farm and the parcel of land sold to the developer for the Willow Creek Estates. The HOA's lawyer started to look uneasy. "This," Frank continued, "is an ironclad agricultural preservation covenant. It explicitly states that no structure can be built and no boundary can be drawn by any current or future landowner that impedes, obstructs, or otherwise hinders the agricultural use of the original farmland. By building that fence, the Willow Creek HOA hasn't just trespassed, they have violated the foundational covenant written into every single one of their own home deeds." You could have heard a pin drop. Mr. Harrison's face went from smug to confused to the color of ash. They had spent all their time and money on a bogus survey, never once checking the history of the land their own houses were built on. They thought they were holding all the cards, but they didn't even know what game they were playing. The judge's ruling on the preliminary injunction was immediate and brutal. He called the HOA's actions a shocking and flagrant abuse of authority and an act of profound arrogance. He declared the fence an illegal structure and ordered the HOA to pay for its immediate removal by a professional crew. He then ordered them to pay for a landscaping company of my choosing to restore the damaged soil. But it didn't stop there. The judge ruled they were responsible for damages for the crops I lost, my time, and every single penny of Frank Miller's considerable legal fees. To top it off, he hit the HOA with a massive fine for knowingly installing an unpermitted high-voltage electric fence in direct violation of county safety codes. Mr. Harrison tried to object, but the judge cut him off, warning him he was seconds away from being held in contempt. 2 days later, a professional fencing company arrived. I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee and watched them tear down every post, roll up every inch of wire, and pull the warning signs from the ground. Mr. Harrison stood on his side of the line, watching his grand project get dismantled. He wouldn't even look at me. The angry buzzing was gone. The only sound was the wind, just as it should be. In the end, their little land grab cost their 80 homeowners a special assessment well into 6 figures. They learned the hard way that the papers your community is built on actually matter. They learned that there's a big difference between a quiet farmer and an easy target. My pumpkin patch is recovering, and the line between my farm and their suburbia has never been clearer. It's marked by an old stone wall and a very, very expensive lesson in respecting your neighbors. And that, my friends, is how a group of busybodies learn not to mess with a man's land. If you believe in fighting for what's yours, hit that subscribe button and share this story with anyone who's ever had to deal with an HOA from hell. I'll see you in the next one.